face imprinted in my mind. I need you. I love the way you are. I love the way you are. A part of you always in me. And when life ends for us both, as the summer cools down, knowing a part of me forever in you, our spirits will rise up high. I love you. The understanding between us, the summer cools down. Nothing being able to part us. Thanks for the years of life. The summer cools down. Immortal love between us. You are the essence of my life. In body, mind, and soul. As the summer cools down. I listen to the words you say, as flowers reach for the sky, my life's inspiration as I go, our love grows more and more. The summer cools down, as the years pass us by, the day the world went away. The summer cools down, beyond the heavens we exist. I'm looking forward to joining you, we have no limit stopping us. The summer cools down.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a good time with the co-chairs, like Marina this morning. Always a very interesting part of this event. My name is Philippe Defraigne. I'll be your MC for the afternoon. Before we make a formal start in a minute with Marco, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping matters. First of all, today is April 1st, you know. Would you dare to organize a serious event on April 1st? Would you do that? But I was assured by Marco and Robert that every official statement made today should be taken at face value. There is no hidden joke. For example, if you hear that budget cuts at berec office means that the cocktail is being cancelled, this is not true. There is a cocktail at 5, okay? A few important housekeeping matters. The first thing is this event will be streamed and recorded. So in a few days, you'll be able to watch it again if you want and read the transcript. And remember, everything you hear today is true, so you may wish to look at the transcript. Second point, engagement tools. If you sit at home or on a beach somewhere behind your screen, there is on the side of the screen a Q&A box, so you can use it to interact with the moderators, and there is a tablet there where your question will land. If you are sitting in this room, I encourage you to pull out your mobile phone. Michel already has it in his hands. That's very good. He's ready. And to point, please do it, because I will ask a question in a second. Point to this QR code, okay? You have it? And I will ask you, an ice-breaking question. I think everybody should be able to answer that one. There will be more difficult question later, is where are you coming from? So mention the country, whether it's in the EU or not, then it's all right to say UK, that's most welcome. Great to have you here. And then, let's watch it together. Who is France? France, Slovenia. Unsurprisingly, Slovenia is doing well. Hungary, recently had the presidency, still in the race. Belgium, but it's the local match, so Belgium do not count. Nice, nice. I mean, very diverse. And look at that, look at that. My friend from Turkey, from BTK Ahi, very delighted to have you guys. So this is the greater Europe that we see here. Excellent. And Philip rocks. I didn't know it was a country, but thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. All right, that was so you get, that's the way it works, okay? Let's now move to another. Some of us may prefer to read what is being said rather than try to listen to it. So we have a tap-to-text device. So if you need that, you can either point to this other QR code, or you find that special QR code at the back of your badge, okay? That's it. One final housekeeping matter for you is to look again at the agenda, so that you see what you will have this afternoon. So we'll have, after Marco's presentation of the work program of next year, we will have a Q&A with Marco and Robert. So I rely on you, sharpen your question. I will need your help on that. Then we will have Roberto Viola that will give a keynote speech, followed by a panel on end-user right and another panel on the future of market power regulation, one of the big topics for next year DNA. And then, as promised, the cocktail. Without further ado, I would like to formally start this afternoon by inviting Marco Mishmash, who is incoming berec chair, so berec chair 2026, and also director of ACOS. Marco, over to you.
Thank you, Philippe. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm happy to be here with you, all of you today. Unfortunately, due to yesterday's strike, some people were not able to make it. But on the lighter note, I'm also glad to be here in a person. I can share with you, my team was considering sending the hologram instead of me here. And I was very happy that my engineers were too busy to do it. And I hope they will stay as busy also in the future, that we will be able to have, let's say, this conference in such a great environment year after year, face to face, discussing our challenges and over a good cup of coffee as well. I also want to welcome other participants who couldn't make into Brussels and are joining us online. It's great that technology allows us to connect and engage in this way. This year's 13th BEREC Stakeholder Forum is taking place in this modern Congress Center, which in many ways reflects how the new technologies are shaping our digital markets and enabling advanced services for all of us. At the start, let me remind us all why we are here today, to discuss BEREC's work, exchange views and ideas, and strengthen our collaboration. This morning, we held the traditional meet and greet meetings with our co-chairs from BEREC's 12 groups with stakeholders. Each year, this part of the event proves more and more how essential and valuable is collaboration, and has become for both BEREC and its stakeholders. By working together, we can achieve our shared goal, an advanced, user-friendly, and ultra-fast digital market. The co-chairs of the BEREC working groups are the STEAM of our organization. They are putting a lot of work and a lot of efforts into making sure that we deliver on our work program year after year. As the incoming chair, together with my ACOS team, the BEREC co-chairs, BEREC members, NRAs, the BEREC office, of course, with your valuable inputs, we must prepare a well-balanced and relevant work program. Over the next few minutes, I will walk you through where we stand, what we achieved so far, and the next steps on the way to finalizing the program by December this year. So let's start with the presentation. We started with our work program preparation already back in January this year, when we sent the outline work program to the EU institutions, to the Parliament, to the Commission, to the Council, and we are expecting their feedback. The 4 objectives of the European Electronic Communication Code remain the foundation and the guiding force for the BEREC's annual work program. Considering recent and expected sectoral developments, strategic priorities will adapt to the new midterm BEREC strategy that will respond to the emerging challenges by focusing on promoting full connectivity, supporting competitive and open digital markets, empowering the end users, and contributing to sustainable, secure, and resilient networks and services. We will strive this year for a bit lighter workload on optional items due to the ad hoc activities envisaged for the 2026. Mandatory tasks that BEREC carries out on an ongoing basis derive mostly from EU legislation, the Code, Open Internet, and roaming regulation. As an example, last week we published the public consultation draft update of the BEREC guidelines on a very high capacity networks. BEREC is also part of the high-level group for the DMA, and most recently we provided to the Commission opinion on Meta's draft reference to facilitate WhatsApp interoperability under the Article 7 of the Digital Market Act. We do the international and institutional cooperation, which is in this new and fast-changing geopolitical situation becoming extremely important. For BEREC, just as important is to develop and strengthen relations with the regulatory authorities around the globe. The next category are so-called carryovers. These projects started already or will start this year and will be finalized in the year 2026. In 2026, we have six such PRDs, so we call them, in 5 BEREC working groups. As I said earlier, we don't start with a blank piece of paper. In the draft outline, we include also a number of recurring projects that we think they are helpful. They are not obligatory, but they are contributing to harmonization and better functioning of the European internal market. To mention, for example, the regulatory accounting in practice report and calculation of WACC parameters and so on. In addition to the items I described so far, we have a section of items that will be considered for the work program 26 and beyond as a candidates. This list is illustrative and does not intend to be exhaustive or final. We will consider them together with your valuable input provided in the different consultation phases. And the last category of items are those that we know that they will come up, but we don't know exactly how big they will be. The DNA proposal, for instance, will probably require us to comment next year. Same is expected for the revision of the European Electronic Communication Code. For all these tasks, we need to reserve some time, some space, just as well as for other things that will pop up unexpectedly. And we don't know yet that we will need to deal with. We have a good expression for them. They are unknown unknowns. On this slide, you can see where we are currently in timeline. We are gathering our internal inputs and your contributions. After that, we will start aligning the program with our draft BEREC strategy, which will rise in a parallel. Once we get your comments and suggestions, we will use the 3 BEREC strategic objectives and priorities to evaluate them. And this is that proposal should promote either full connectivity or support sustainable and open digital markets or empower the end users. The public consultation will take place in October, and the final adoption of the document is planned for the December. At the end, I would like to invite you once again to send your input. When you send your suggestions, please use the format that we have suggested in the BEREC website. Please give us the title, what strategic priority your proposal is linked to, and a short description. You can even suggest the format, be it a workshop or report, or you see the need for guidelines. Your ideas are very important to us. Please send them all in before the April 10th. You can help us and understand different positions on the future development. This is very important. And equally important, give us suggestions for possible improvements that are very welcome too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. I'm now delighted to welcome on stage Robert Murik, BEREC Chair and Comrec Commissioner. Please, Robert. But now the ball is in your camp, so we expect questions from the room. I know a number of people we know have promised question. Okay. Oh, Ben from Connect Europe. Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks a lot. My question regards the DNA, which will be, I think, the main file on everyone's lips this year. And I would be interested to know, what does BEREC see as the 3 main priorities within the scope of the DNA, which will be necessary to achieve the digital decade targets, also taking into consideration the massive investment needs that are required in order to meet them?
Depends what Roberto will say, Ben.
Takes this one. Yeah, take it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A question of general interest, I would say. Who wants to? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think the 3 main priorities is we need to stimulate the competition. This is let's say, these are the basics of the BEREC. The change the regulatory scope to deal with new softwareized networks. We all know that the environment is changing, that the networks are more and more software-defined, are moving to the software-defined space. And we need to have, let's say, efficient tools to, let's say, be able to deal with it. And the 3rd one is effective agile tools also to stimulate the demand side. These, I think, are the 3 main, let's say, topics needs to be covered.
Do you want to add to that, Rob? Or?
No, you can't summarize it in 3 topics. It was a bit unfair, but I think competition, as Marco said, will always remain at the top of our objectives, because that is how you achieve so many other things in this world. And it's not as if just because we move ahead in time that the threat of abuse of dominance is going. So the competition remains the top one. We have to adapt to a new framework, to a new technology. We need to rethink our ways, because copper is going and we get fiber, we get different products. And then finally, we're building all these beautiful networks. We are seeing fiber everywhere, but the real benefit of it only happens when users start to use it. So we also need to, I think, pay a bit more attention, although that is not something that we've traditionally done. We have to be able to get users to migrate to fiber in order to actually get the benefits.
After Connect Europe, Pinar from ECTA. You see how well organized it is here, you know? Thank you, Pinar.
Incredibly fair. Thank you, Philippe. When we look today at the regulatory measures in place for the fixed networks and services market in Europe, we see that for most of the NRAs, the market one still remains regulated. So only 4 of them have been totally abstained from regulating the market. And from those, if you look at a bit closer to the recent developments, the Romanian NRA has opened a public consultation whereby they are proposing to re-regulate part of the market. Then we have, if you look at the Bulgarian NRA, they have engaged in defining a physical infrastructure access market. Then we have the Dutch NRA, that in fact they have accepted binding commitments in lieu of SMP regulation, so it's not a real total deregulation. And we have Austrian case that humbly we said that in our opinion, in ECTA's opinion, there were no conditions to deregulate. When we look at Market 2, we see that to a lesser extent, but still 16 NRAs are regulating the market. And when we look, the NRA's methods in order to make the market analysis are clearly sophisticated. They are based on evidences and sound data analysis. So how do you reconcile the Commission's proposal in the white paper to either cancel all the relevant markets from the recommendation or to foresee only a physical infrastructure access market but with lighter regulatory measures? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who shall take this? Yeah, you take it.
Okay, I think the competition itself, I'm afraid, won't be enough just to guarantee for enabling, you mentioned, access on the wholesale level, especially if I look into, let's say, my country on the rural areas. Access regulation and pricing for access will in some way most likely need to be controlled. I'm not saying that the regime we have, SMP regime, is the only way and the only right way to do this. Might be also the other approaches just as efficient, and some NRAs, like you mentioned, have been innovating, if I may use this term here already, and testing other solutions. There are still measures if we deregulate some markets, which in my opinion is very good, especially now where we are entering preparation phase for a new legislation.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think BEREC is very clear. We want to keep ex-ante regulation and we want the SMP regime. But the legislation for the last 25 years may still be needed for a while, but is not the legislation that we probably need for the next 25 years. So we're also thinking about how does the regulation and the access regulation need to change. And one of the things that I can see is that we would love to deregulate where possible, but we then want to have the tools to intervene quickly when certain things go wrong. So what the Commission is going to do, you will have to ask the Commission, but I think our wish list is fairly clear.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Don't know how you do it, guys, but I could see Marit nodding in answer to your first question, and Pinar is nodding to what you say. So I don't know how you please everybody like that. You know? But Dean Bubley.
Hi there. Thank you. Do we need, in your view, to revisit some of our assumptions about usage of networks, and particularly the forecasts for traffic growth, both on fixed but especially mobile, which seem to underpin a lot of the policy direction on investment, on spectrum, on all sorts of things, because it now looks as if data demand is flattening, particularly in mobile, while technology such as AI is actually leading to increased efficiencies, for example, in use of networks or capacity. So we might actually end up in a position of overcapacity. Do we need to be careful in some cases not to create an environment where we end up mandating more overcapacity if that scenario does come to pass?
Thank you. Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, capacity is quite lumpy, and not in the mobile sector, but in fixed, it is quite lumpy in terms of how you prepare the network for that. So we are making a step change at the moment from copper to fiber, and with that you kind of get a very good upgrade path. And whether the traffic growth is 100 or whether it's 200, the network is capable of dealing with that. On mobile, it's a bit different, but let me say, I hear so many contradicting things about traffic growth. Yes, it is plateauing a little bit at the moment, I think, but I also hear from certain parts of industry that with AI and the use of AI by consumers, that traffic growth can go further up. So it cuts both ways, Dean, and we will see. I think with fiber, we are investing in a very future-proof technology. We would have to go there anyway, and with 5G, you can kind of build the capacity as it comes. So we're okay.
Thank you, Dean. Let's go to Eve here on the second row. Lady, a mic here on the second row. And then we'll go to Aurélie. After that, we'll need a mic. Can you just bring a phone here on the second row? That's, yeah, okay. So, okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my question is, you people speaking about competition. But the matter is, the MNOs in Europe try to kill the MVNOs. In Netherlands, if you check last 5 to 10 years, 50% of MVNOs stopped because of the power misuse of the MNOs. MNOs don't give access the right wholesale price, but the regulatory, they can do nothing. They sitting and watching, and MNOs close the MVNOs or pushing out the market. And in the news, 50% of the Netherlands MVNOs stopped, and the rest are also going to stop. But now, we are under the market coming Chinese mobile in, because there's no low-budget MVNOs, but because via the EU regulation, people coming from.
Thank you. No,
Yeah.
I think we've got your point. So,
shall I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can't answer specifically to that case. Anne-Marie in the audience may, but as a regulator, how we deal with that is very simple. If an MVNO gets bought by an MNO, you have normal kind of competition analysis, merger analysis, to see if the market is still competitive enough after that merger. And as a regulator, therefore, you form yourself an opinion about whether the competition after a merger or after a consolidation is still okay. You try to let the market rule itself or deal with itself as much as possible. You're not going to intervene continuously, only when it's a real danger to the market. For example, if you're going to get from 3 mobile operators to 2 mobile operators, I think the authorities will intervene. But on the upward trend or in between, I think you will have to make a careful judgment of what the market is doing.
No, let's leave it like. Thank you, sir. You can continue at the coffee break if you wish. Eve, and then we will need a mic on the top for Aurélie. Like you can climb the stairs. Over to you, Eve.
Thank you. I'm Yves Blondel of T-Regs, a specialist in telecom regulation. BEREC was founded 15 years ago. You're not seeming to be celebrating that very explicitly, but okay.
Wait for the drinks.
Yeah, I'd really like to ask you, which are the achievements of BEREC that you're most proud of in your capacity as chairman and incoming chairman? But
it all happened this year.
Yeah,
you know?
but maybe to be a bit more precise, I think also as an individual head of an NRA for some years, like what's your perspective on what has BEREC done for you? How has BEREC helped you to achieve certain things? And I'm thinking, of course, of the subtext of harmonization, best practices, common positions, and such elements. So if you could give concrete examples of that, that would be nice. And then perhaps, the contributions going forward, like what BEREC can contribute to the framework if it changes to our environment, to our telecom sector. I think we all know that big legislative changes seem to be on the horizon, so what can BEREC do in that light and in the longer future?
If I were to answer that, I think what I'm quite proud, or very proud of, is that we've built a very professional organization and group of regulators that is willing to stand up for its principles and is willing, despite all the political going-ons, we look at the facts, we, without fear or favor, make decisions, also against each other if that is necessary. You ask for specific things, Article 7 or Article 32, those processes, I think, give you ample possibilities to see how we go about that. And sometimes we vote in favor of the Commission, sometimes we vote in favor of an individual NRA, depending on the facts. And if we have not feared to pick a fight with the Commission, for example, in the case of fair share, when we thought that was necessary. So I think exerting our right as an independent body is, I think, the thing that I'm most proud of. What you don't see is on a daily basis how BEREC in the background supports, how we support each other. You may not know this, but we kind of have a network where we ask each other on a daily basis questions. How do you do this? How do you do that as a regulator? And there is an enormous amount of harmonization going, stemming from that, by us just asking our colleagues who have already dealt with a certain topic or who have a certain market situation that is the same as yours, how they dealt with a particular problem. And that is a kind of a daily form of collegiality that is actually very important, I think, for the harmonization in Europe that we're about to do just on a daily basis.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's go to Aurélie from Vantage Tower, then to Anna.
Hi.
Please catch my eye if you want to ask a question. Oh, yes, yeah, Alessandro.
Thank you. My question would be about the Gigabit Infrastructure Act. Just to set the context first, there are a lot of progress on connectivity, of course, but there are still a lot of white spots, especially for rural areas and also alongside transport corridors. And as a tower company, one of the bottlenecks that we see is also the lack of timely and reliable access to energy connection, to grid connection. The delays, they can range for lack of priority for mobile communication or lengthy permitting, which are not harmonized at all. And that's precisely the question of permit that I would like to address. So the GI is now there. There are a lot of progress for the permitting, but the GI doesn't address the permitting for energy to have access to the grid. So I'm wondering how BEREC will see its role in ensuring that the progress of the GIA regarding the building permitting are not undermined by the fact that there is a very slow access to energy. And the follow-up question on this would be whether there are some interaction between the regulators, BEREC and the energy regulator. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurélie. Sounds useful to have energy at the side of a base station.
To share with you, majority of BEREC's NRA does not have jurisdictions on the energy regulation. This does not mean that we are not dealing with this issue. Some of us already tackled similar, let's say, questions, and are working also to put both networks together to correlate the, let's say, dependencies between those two networks, which is very important for that telecommunication networks is working properly. The energy is the first one needs to be there. We see, as you mentioned, some synergies in contact with Acer. This is the EU agency for the energy, to discuss the challenge, and only by working together, I think both sectors could find the effective solution to speed up this.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something that is very relevant in the sense that we have the energy sector and energy regulation and the energy regulator on the one hand, and we have ourselves, and we will have to work more and more closely together, that is clear, because we had a storm not too long ago, the electricity went out, and that is why the telecom networks also suffered and in many cases went out. So the cooperation between the energy regulators and the energy regulation and that of telecoms will have to deepen and increase.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anna from Bouygues Telecom, then we'll go to Alessandro. I'll need a mic on the 8th row.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. So my question deals with the access regulation. And I would like to know, to have your assessment on several points. So in a time of simplification, we keep hearing about more and more about symmetric regulation, which recovers several meanings within GIA, which is completely different from the code symmetric meaning in the Article 61. So I would like to know what is your assessment of symmetric regulation and whether you consider that symmetric and SMP regulation are complementary.
There are a couple of things that I want to say. First of all, the thing that we'd like to do most, of course, is that we see market circumstances that are competitive where we don't need any regulation. That is kind of the ideal, and whether we reach that or not is a second thing, either asymmetric or symmetric. But I actually think, given the way the market is developing, we probably see a more, an increased relevance of symmetric regulation in the future, in the sense that in the past we had one monopolistic network and we tried to make the market competitive. So you had to regulate a single party in most cases to bring that competition about. What we now see is that market has changed and we see multiple fiber networks in the country, and ideally, of course, they compete and you don't need regulation. But I do think that given that trend of multiple networks, not everywhere, I'm not saying that it is the same in every country, but I think that that trend of having multiple fiber networks, sometimes overlapping, sometimes not, that is increasing the need perhaps of symmetric regulation, and especially when you also look at how the GIA is working and how the importance of infrastructure access is growing. That is kind of more symmetric in nature as well. So that's how I would answer at a very high level your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob. Alessandro from MVNO Europe.
Hi, everybody. Robert, we are less than 3 months from the roaming regulation review, the first one after 2022. I hope we will have more information maybe from the Commission later today. As MVNOs, you know very well, we advocated for reduction of wholesale roaming caps to avert increasingly negative margins. And when it comes to IoT, which today is a very important topic, we have asked regulatory clarification in that field to empower this technology. So my question is, what's BEREC position on this? What you would like to expect from the roaming regulation review? Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, you should check your email because yesterday, late yesterday, I signed our BEREC opinion for the roaming regulation. So there is we have published, or we are about to publish our opinion on that. And that will reveal everything in far more detail than I can say. Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. That's a pointed response. Time for one. Maria Teresa. Thank you. Time for one more question. I think that's it. Maria Teresa, CCIA.
Thank you. So, according to the Commission's white paper, the review of the European Electronic Communications Code could see an extension of its scope to new actors, digital players. Do you see a market failure or a problem in how things work currently that would justify this extension of the scope?
Is that a response? Okay. Is that a response?
No, that is a very difficult question to ask, because we are telecom regulators and we don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of other markets. So that's first of all something for the Commission to decide. And when the Commission thinks about the extension of scope, they also need to look at all the other legislation, the more horizontal legislation that has come out. Like the DMA is there. We have the AI Act, the Data Act. There is a kind of a web or a mismatch of regulation at the moment. And what we have said as berec to the Commission is that what we prefer is that the Commission deals with things in horizontal legislation, if there is specific legislation, first, and only puts in the DNA where there is a specific communication sector need for it. So I could give you some examples. The one that springs to mind at the moment, which is absolutely not what you have in mind, but is, for example, with consumer, on the consumer legislation side, the issue of accessibility. There is a European Accessibility Act, and then there are provisions on accessibility in the DNA or in the code. There are lots of examples like that where there is a kind of a special telecom flavor in the code, whereas there is also horizontal legislation. And what we have said is put as much in horizontal legislation as possible and only put something in the code or in the DNA if there is a specific need for it. And with regard to the extension of scope, exactly the same applies. We would not, as berec, we would not propose to put something in there that is already taken care of by competition law or by other specific regulation or directive.
Thank you, Rob. That will be the final word. Please join me in thanking Rob and Marco for these answers. Thank you. We're very fortunate today to have among us the Director General of DG Connect, Roberto Viola. Please, Roberto, join us on stage. Thank you.
Hi, Rob. Hi. I joined you on stage, but you disappeared. Fine. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be at the berec Stakeholder Forum. I will not tell you how many berec Stakeholder Forum I've done, but a number. And I always enjoy the possibility to be here, because it's a forum made of professionals which have a very high level of knowledge of the sector, in general of issues which are around electronic communication. The question and answer showed, the level of depth of the discussion, so it's always really a great pleasure. Now, also my role today is a bit uncomfortable because you can imagine, I mean, many things are happening, but they are all in the oven, in the cooking, so it's very difficult, I mean, to go in a lot of detail at this point in time. But I will try to make an effort to give you the direction of travel, though. So the direction of travel, you have seen it from the political program of the new commission, which has been spelled out by the president, from the confirmatory hearing of Vice President Virkkunen, which is entrusted also for electronic communication, among many other things. And you have seen it from the first steps, which are mainly policy papers and strategies that the Commission has published. Clearly, you see the direction which is very marked in terms of competitiveness, to make sure that Europe maintains its own strengths, industrial strengths, but also cures its weaknesses. Among those, clearly, we have a lot to do when it comes to the digital ecosystem. You have seen that we have been very assertive in saying Europe needs to be stepping up the capacities to have a better management of internal security and have capacity in defense, which of course cross very much also the whole of the digital ecosystem. The obvious ways, cybersecurity, but also many of the defense and security technology are the same technology used for commercial services. Also, you have seen that for us it remains very important the respect of fundamental rights and rule of law, and that crosses all the set of measures that have been taken in the offline and online world. In this context, looking at, again, those priorities, you see how things will unveil and how the sequence of things is organized in the coming weeks and months. The first thing, on the 9th of April, we will publish what we call the AI Continent Action Plan, which is basically trying to understand how we are going to organize an ecosystem around artificial intelligence that is conducive to the investment of 200 billion that the European Commission President has announced in Paris, what kind of infrastructure measure we will take, what kind of steps we will take with all the various components of the artificial intelligence ecosystem, which is every single industry, every single company, I mean, and in which way we would like to organize our work and work together. Then going into, let's say, what is to be expected in terms of maintaining this stance on competitiveness, clearly we need to look at how to simplify rules. That's why, I mean, towards the end of the year, we have a simplification, digital simplification package where all the rules, I mean, will come under scrutiny and see what steps we need to take to simplify horizontally many of the things. We have, I mean, what we call the data union, so taking all our data rules and again, streamlining, but also making sure that we have a system which is conducive to have the best data sets available for the best European industries to grow. Because Europe is not scarce in terms of talents, Europe is not scarce in terms of data, Europe is not scarce in terms of industrial capacity. All of this must be conducive to have the best industrial artificial intelligence of the world. The elements that point into also the direction of having an infrastructure that underpins all this vision are, of course, those of connectivity and cloud. And that's why there you will see two plans that are coming together. I mean, first of all, I mean, an overall reflection and modernization and simplification of the telecom laws, which is dubbed as Digital Network Act. And, I mean, looking at many of the intricacies which make the cloud market not functioning perfectly well in Europe. When you see the density of data centers in Europe is less than what you see in the United States, and this is not okay, because a modern economy is based on cloud systems. So trying to take all the structural elements of the cloud market, there will be the AI and Cloud Development Act, and modernizing our connectivity rules, looking at convergence, as we explained in the white paper, so convergence between computing, cloud, and data transport, that is the Digital Network Act. So if I zoom in a little bit into the Digital Network Act, we have published a white book. You read the report from Mr. Letta and Mr. Draghi in chronological order. I think we are ready to embrace quite a bold reflection on what needs to be done. We are at the beginning of this mandate, so we have time, to stabilize it, to negotiate it with the co-legislator well, so nothing should be excluded if necessary. Now, there may be a very long conversation about the telecom rules to be modernized. Maybe they are, this sectorial legislation is totally irrelevant to the big picture that I discussed before. Or maybe yes, and of course opinions are very different, and I imagine also in this room. But maybe when you dig in and you discover that Europe is not doing fantastically well when it comes to the adoption by citizens of fiber. Now you might say, but it's not bad. We are passing, the mark of already past the 50% of fiber penetration. Yeah, but our benchmark is not the lowest in class. Our benchmark should be the best possible countries of the world. And there, of course, you might conclude, yes, we have 3 or 4 countries which are at par, but the rest is not. And Europe is made of 450 million citizens. So Europe needs to be better in fiber. Europe needs to be better in 5G. Native 5G, it's only 20%. It's a shame. And there's no industrial explanation for this, because in Europe we have the best telecom manufacturing companies of the world. So we have the industrial capacity. We have the possibility, through our industrial capacity, to supply secure networks, and we must do better in 5G and must do better in 6G. We see underinvestment when it comes to telecom companies overall. The explanation of most of these companies that, but the market is very competitive, we are burning capital, we are not the capacity. Whatever is the explanation, it has an effect that those companies which are supposed to move into software-defined networks, to move into hybrid infrastructure, which also have cloud offering and computing offer, cannot do that. So we miss this kind of dimension of the industrial capacity, which has been the pattern 20 years ago, because many of the telecom companies in Europe contributed to the digital transformation at that time, the first, if you like, digital revolution. So the lack of capacity to invest, yes, some of them are investing, but compared to the amount of money which is being announced around the world, it's little money. It's also another issue. So you sum up, a performance in fiber, which is okay, but not that okay. A performance in wireless, in spite of the industrial capacity of Europe, which is poor. The capacity of investment, which is so and so. We have reasons to think that it is not totally irrelevant that we have a discussion on the telecom regulation and how to do it better. Of course, there are things we want to keep. The competition in the European market is absolutely fierce, and companies and citizens benefit from this. We have a very competitive offer, good quality offer, And this is an indicator that, I mean, in that area, we have to be very careful because more than fixing, we could actually worsen the situation. But at the same time, we don't want gold plating of consumer protection because gold plating of consumer protection is not a friend of the internal market, it's not a friend of economies of scale and scope. The other element we have to be very mindful, it's security. I mean, we have to do much better when it comes to network security. So all these elements are now sitting in front of us, and I very transparently also told you what are the elements, and they now look for solution in terms of the Digital Network Act, which of course will look at all the existing legislation in telecom, the code, the other regulations that exist, and try to do an operation of simplifying rules as much as we can, making sure, I heard it, that the rules are as much horizontal as we can, and as much as internal market as we can. And here it comes, I mean, the white book with the solutions that we have kind of offered for discussion. And now we are in discussions with you, the stakeholders, with BEREC, with other industry actors, trying to understand which idea flies, which idea doesn't fly, which parts are missing. So that's where we are. We are absolutely determined to finish the work by the end of the year, so to present the Digital Network Act by the end of this year. And of course, in doing so, we have still a few months to go, where I think the most important thing is to get the facts right, to get the information right, and to have a package which is ambitious, but at the same time actionable and negotiable, because then if we spend 5 years in, I mean, trying to iron out a political deal with a lot of resistance everywhere, it will not work. So at the end of the day, I wouldn't say ambition has to be leveled off with, I mean, what is actionable practical, because that is too early to say, but clearly also we will deliver something that makes sense. But in doing that, internal market friendliness, same rules, same service, competitiveness, this will be very important pillars that we want to make sure that they are there. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
You come back now.
Thank you. Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you to you.
I remember when you came to speak to us for the 10th anniversary of BEREC.
Yeah,
it was you spoke about digital autonomy, strategy, sovereignty, autonomy. I can't remember the words you used.
And I was a Martian at that time.
And at that time, I was shocked. I said, what is he talking about, doing our own chips? And when you look back, you were pretty much of a visionary, I would say, when you see the state of the world.
Well, visionary in Italian language means somebody that is a bit fool. I mean,
well, you need a bit of that. You need a bit of that. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to... Yes, your secrets. I had already auction. I was running an auction for the dossier. Who wants a draft of the DNA, you know? Thank you very much, Tonko. Now, let's watch cartoons together. Are you ready? Are you ready? But pay attention, because I'll have a question for you. This is by way of an introduction to the next panel. So watch this, carefully.
I hope I will be able to use electronic communication services as I age and am less sharp.
Yeah, I also hope that internet access will remain affordable to all of us in the future as well.
Great question. I hate when operators increase prices, but I cannot simply switch providers.
You are right. It is so easy to sign the contract, but they can make leaving quite difficult.
Maybe sometimes it is. I think that all stakeholders must work together to ensure that end-user welfare remains at the heart of regulation.
And I know some regulators have also acted to ensure that providers display price clauses clearly, so consumers aren't caught off guard by surprise price hikes.
What about digital security, though? With all these new technologies, I'm a little bit concerned about the fraud and scams.
Thank you for watching this carefully. Please reach out for your phone. Reach on for your phone, because you will need it. Please take it, switch on the camera. Here is the question. I'm not going to ask you what you think about those comments. Of course, they are talking about countries where you don't operate, and it's about other countries, you know. My question to you is, which of the 7 consumers that testified on this video were which one was not a real human being? Which one was created by AI? And don't be influenced by the early vote. You know, we need to have a large poll. Please vote. Joe, what do you think? Well, your money is on whom? You know. All right. More time. Victoria is coming back. Sarah now. Mia still leading. I mean, you got the point, exactly. I mean, most of you got it right. You know, I will now say it. Mia was, in fact, the character that was created by AI and not really actually interviewed by berec office. So why do we show you that? By way of introduction to the next panel, which will be on end-user right. And with AI, you know, the amount of scams that digital consumers are suffering from will only increase, which will be one of the topics that our distinguished panelists will discuss in a minute. So may I ask the panelists to join me on stage? We have Ben Wrechter from Vodafone, Marina Ljubic-Karnovic from the co-chair of the berec working group on end users, Johan Ketelaar from Oxera, and Claudio Textera from BUC, the European Union of Consumers, well known. And the panel will be moderated by Bostian Okorn from the Slovenian Consumer Protection Organization. From the Consumer Organization. Bostian, this is where you are receiving questions.
Okay, and I have my questions here too, so
voilà.
Thank you. First, I'm not from the Consumer Protection Authorization, but from the association, which is different because we are the NGO. So hello to everyone here in the audience, and of course you, the panelists. It was interesting to see those AI and non-AI generated videos, and I'm really glad that we are here live because we are real people. We are not generated by someone in the cloud. Maybe I'll try to introduce myself because I've been working in telecommunication for quite a long time. First as a journalist, I remember when the GSM came out. And it was quite a big achievement. We could walk and talk. Then we could walk and talk throughout the world, throughout Europe. Now we can play, we can watch videos, whatever, throughout the world, throughout Europe, unless it's not too expensive, of course. And since 2006, I'm part of the team of the Slovene Consumer Association, also part of the BEUC team, the digital team. and working also on some other topics like like the comparative testing, and we've just done the comparative testing of information that consumers are given when they actually close the contract in the shop of operators, and we realized that they are never really informed what they were signing, which is really, this is really last day's news, so to say. And of course, we were really concerned because I think that users who didn't think about the mobile telephony 20, 25 years ago, now they're coming into much different space, and when they're signing the contract, they're not really aware of what is happening to them, what will happen to them, which costs do they have to bear, and so on. So this contract, when they sign, if they don't see it, if they don't see even the short resume of this contract, it's really, really, I would say, doubtful if it's a really nice thing for consumers. But we will talk this a little bit more broadly, and I'm glad that I have here my colleague from BEUC, Consumer Association. We have the analytic, we have the berec, and we have the operator. And maybe I'll just start with a lady. Of course, it's a berec's event, so I think it's also from this perspective good. And go around in the first round with very general questions. So how do you see the telecommunication market in the EU compared to the other markets or to the other world, especially from the consumer or end user point of view? I'm really sorry because I'm from Consumer Association and I realize that there are also some other end users, but at the end, someday, at some time, we are all consumers. So please.
Thank you, Boštjan, and I'm real, I'm not artificial intelligence generated. So before I start, we really have to pay attention to that we are all consumers. So everything that we do and everything that we say, we are doing for us. And what can I say as a berec member is that we achieved a very high level end user protection. And always, regarding what technologies will arrive, there are some key points that will always be in the focus of regulation and berec, of course, and all the NRAs. And that is transparency. So everything should be clear for end users, their rights and their obligations. Safety. We heard it before, so safety from the bill shocks, safety for some unexpected circumstances, especially fraudulent activities and scams, because consumers have to have faith in digital interaction and also have faith in new technologies, because only a well-informed end users who knows and understands how to use new technologies will use it and will benefit from it. Then we need simplicity. Simplicity in resolving disputes, simplicity in resolving some issues and asking questions from the operators. What is important is digital inclusion. So we have to focus on to have digital inclusion of all end users. And we all have to work together to achieve that. We also heard it before in the cartoon. And of course, end users have to have right to choose between different offers from the operators. If they have one operator and only a few offers, what can they choose? So there has to be a diversity for the end users to be able to have informed choice. And at the end, of course, we need affordability and accessibility key goals.
Thank you. Claudio, you agree that the berec is doing a good, great job here in Europe?
Thanks. Thank you for that. Yes, I very much agree. Music to my ears. First of all, just allow me to say thank you to berec for the invitation, for BEUC, for the European Consumer Organization to be here today, to discussing this very important topic, which, you know, in this whole narrative, let's put it this way, that has been taken us over as this aspect hasn't been exactly, you know, been much on focus, which is the end user rights. And for us, this is by far the most important aspect which to come out of the negotiations a while ago, not so long ago, and which for us is fundamental to provide this, what we call the consumer safety net, which is when everything falters and everything fails, the last resort that we have to make sure that the market ensures a very basic level playing field but to all competitors, but most importantly, a very much baseline for protection of consumers is precisely these rules. And these are fundamentally important to implement. Sadly to say, though, even though we do have these rules, they haven't really seen, you know, full development, full maturity yet. We are all very much aware of how late and delayed the implementation of the code has been. And from our side, we think that there's still much more to do to ensure that these rules are indeed translated into reality in member states, into more clear enforceable rules to protect consumers. Because even though we do have these rules, the fact remains that, and as Philippe was saying, in other countries, you know, I wish it was just in other countries. It's too close to home still, and there's still a lot of work to do. And our consumer surveys, our consumer complaints that our members get every day show that is still, even though the rules are a reality, this implementation on the ground is still, we're still a far cry from getting there, but I'm sure we're going to have more opportunity to talk about that.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the operator, Mr. Reschner. What is your view of the market? So from your point of view, is it well developed? Is there something that you should take care more of? What are the challenges? What are the positive things?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank Philippe for hosting as well. Look, I think answering this question, I'd like to look back, look at the here and now, and maybe look forward a little bit. If we look back, and Yves, thank you for reminding us this is the 15th anniversary of BEREC. So I did a little bit of research. 15 years ago, there was an Irish chair of BEREC. Robert, you're not the second Irish chair, you're the third Irish chair of BEREC. Maybe the Competition Authority needs to look at that, but I'll leave that to someone else. But if we look back 15 years ago and we think about where we were in the world, I remember not long before 2010 having that experience of, it was actually on an iPhone, of seeing the internet on a phone, the real internet. I'm not talking about WAP, if those that remember WAP. I'm talking about real internet, a website that I would look at on my PC. Suddenly it appeared in full color on my phone, and I was amazed. I remember, I'll get the numbers wrong, but someone will correct me later, no doubt, but at home, getting my 2 megabit per second broadband connection. I think in those days, I had been on Wanadoo, for those that remember Wanadoo. I think I'd moved to Orange by that time. Became BT, and then now I'm at Vodafone for obvious reasons. But you know, the 2 meg per second, and then we all talk about, well, will we ever need 6 meg per second on a home connection? And you know, does 4G actually, is it necessary? Will we ever have the use cases? So Dean, your challenge on growth in demand, yes, but we've been saying that for a very, very long time, and it's always continued to grow. But my serious point here is that we can move a step away from end user rights in the here and now. The biggest protection of end user rights is, can we continue the technological progress that we've had for the last 15, 20 years? Because it is technological progress which determines our everyday experience. If we compare now to 15 years ago, we have our entire lives in a pocket, or you know, connected to a cloud somewhere, who knows where. And we take it for granted, our photo album, our entire music library. Right? Our connectivity with everyone, whoever they are, wherever they are in the world, is something that we could not have imagined 15 years ago, and that's what we have today. And that is what's going to protect our end users the most of all in 15 years' time. It's not whether we worry about contract terms and conditions, I'll come to that in a moment, but it's, can we make sure that we have the technological progress to keep these wonderful innovations live for our customers. And I'm sure we will get the technological progress, but here as well, Europe needs to really have a wake-up call, and Roberta mentioned it earlier. We need to make sure that Europe doesn't fall further behind, because 15 years ago, we were at the forefront of technology. We had all of it wasn't just about 2 equipment manufacturers, we were leading the world. And we're not in that space now, and we need to really look hard at the regulatory regime to ensure that European technology and European connectivity companies can return to the forefront of innovation and technology. Then let's go to the here and now, and I think there's just one point on on the, say, the contractual terms and conditions and the transparency. So we fully support transparency. It's a necessity. We put our customers in for 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts, whatever it might be, and they need to have the certainty, and that's something we fully support. There needs to be an understanding of what they're signing up for. The only thing I would caution, and I think Robert did refer to it earlier, is where we have a risk of overlapping obligations. And I think the best case in point we recently had in the UK. So we spent the best part of, I'd say, 18 months, 2 years, with Ofcom working out exactly how we need to communicate mid-contract price rises to our customers and the form those mid-contract price rises could take. We had issues around were we allowed to have inflation-linked prices. That was decided to be not allowed. The price rises had to be an exact amount in pounds and pence, and we work with that. But the point is we got to a conclusion on what we're allowed to do. At the same time, we have very strict obligations from the Advertising Standards Agency in terms of what are we allowed to communicate publicly about what our prices are. And then at the end of last year, the CMA, the Competition Authority, became the third regulator to decide it's going to look at how we communicate our prices and our 24 months contract. Bringing this into the topic of drip pricing, which is a completely separate topic, which more relates to when you go online and you buy an airline ticket for £6 or €6, and you find that when you go to the basket, it's 25. So that was a drip pricing initiative, which then ended up bringing 24-month contracts into the discussion. And so we are all in favor of transparency. It's a necessity when we have long-term contracts for our customers. But please, regulate us once. There's enough horizontal regulation. It makes life easier for ourselves, but it also makes life easier for our customers if they are clear in understanding what rules we have to comply with and what they can expect to see. And the third point I'll make, can I just make one point looking forward? Oh.
Yeah, we will run out of time, so I have further questions then after. So it's maybe for the beginning it's okay. I'll go to Mr. Kitteler now. What is your view from above, so to say? What is the role or position of consumers in the telecommunication market in Europe?
First of all, thank you for having me here. And I'm with Oxera, and Oxera works for a lot of clients. And just to make sure that I'm not representing any of the clients here, I'm also an adjudicator in Ireland. I'm not speaking in that capacity either. I'm more speaking as a sort of experienced specialist or as an end user myself. So I will try to contribute a little bit to what has been said already from my own experience as a regulator, as having worked in big tech, but also having worked in a startup. I go back just as long ago as Ben did. I know all the examples that you refer to, sadly enough, and even more so. I come from a time where the networks were really slow. I worked in a startup in the Netherlands, actually, when we built the first mobile app, which was really slow. It was quite cool, but very slow. So I think we've come a long way. And I think in general, if you look at where the end users are in this market, I think they're in a pretty good place, generally. I had to go to Berlin a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to go by train from Amsterdam. It took me ages to find out first what the connection would be, and then it was not a real alternative for flying. So I think that's another example where there's a lot of room of improvement for Europe to work on better systems. And at the same time, in telecom markets, we take all those kind of things for granted, right? So I think it's a very good moment, like Roberto just said, to take a bit of a pause, look at where we are right now, also embrace all the benefits, but also take a critical look at some of the things that we have created ourselves or that have evolved in a particular way, especially in the times that we are living right now. So, and I think the end user perspective is sometimes also a little bit overlooked. We take it for granted, or we look more at wholesale markets, whereas I think it's very important, like Claudio just said, to take that perspective as well, business users as well as like individual users. I think if you then look at the whole digital ecosystem, which I think you should do, and I understand, of course, given the mandate of Berec and also the mandate of Roberto, that he takes the DNA as a sort of vehicle to do this assessment, I think you should look even a little bit broader, because the issues that were mentioned, like security, geopolitical tensions, refer to other pieces of legislation which are not necessarily within the Berec mandate, but are equally important to sort of harmonize or streamline or make more coherent. Because I think we all know that we ended up with this sort of patchwork of regulations, which in itself is nobody to blame for, but it's just the reality of today, and a lot of enforcing authorities also who need to work more together than ever. And I think there's a lot of gain to be one still in that space to make it a little bit more streamlined. If you do so, then I think you will also see as BEREC and as enforcers of telecom laws and of digital laws that some of the regulations can be easier, simplified. Like I said, not just like in the telco space, but also like law enforcement. When I was like working in big tech, we had like many discussions in each of the jurisdictions about very specific issues which could easily be more harmonized. It's just one example, but I think there are also within the telco framework a lot of examples where you can have like more simplified rules. I think also not just the EECC, but if you look at open internet regulation, this is me speaking as an economist, and I think that the UK with Ofcom has taken this approach already. There should be a bit more flexibility for innovation. And I think we are now, in the EU at least, like stuck a little bit into a legal reality given the ECJ hearings, judgments. And I think there should be a little bit of opening up to accommodate like people like BEREC and like Ben and Vodafone together with content providers to work on use cases that could be beneficial for consumers ultimately. So I think we need to step over that shadow and try to face the discussion also with like political people who might be more like fundamental in that space, but with evidence you can show that there's a bit more space there. And then in digital markets, right, there's a lot of discussion between telcos and digital markets, and mostly they are complementary. Of course, there's a lot of conversation about same service, same rules. That in itself is true, I would say, but quite often the services are not completely the same, and you should really dive into the dynamics of each of those services to see what's needed. I think transparency, it's been mentioned already. I think on the telco side, there's a lot of transparency already. I think on the digital side, there's a lot to be gained still. Me as a consumer would like to know more about the way algorithms work, the way content is moderated. Again, this is to some extent maybe outside BEREC's mandate or some of the NRA's mandate. It's maybe covered by the DSA. We don't know exactly where the boundaries are. But I think if you do a sort of like overall reassessment of all the digital and telco rules, don't forget to include all the other subjects. And if needed, and I think that BEREC can play a role here, because I think the BEREC brand is very credible. To me, it comes across, of course, I'm biased, I was part of that family, but I think it's still very independent and evidence-based, and I think that BEREC should also include like other authorities into that debate to come to more harmonized rules.
Mm-hmm. Telecommunication market is really becoming very broad, and it's covering, like you said, not only the telecommunication operators, but everything that is working on it. So, and what we heard is that people are obviously not using the telecommunication services enough to fill up the network bandwidth that is available. On the other side, we know that some people can't use this these services because they don't have enough of bandwidth. So, Claudia, do you see any risk of digital exclusion due to this difference in broadband, or even the changes in the whole society, that people will start to really gather in centers where this broadband is available and not live where it isn't? And maybe the other question, what measures should the regulators make, not only in the telecommunication sector, but also the other sectors? So how to complement these measures that consumer will be protected all the way from A to B, so to say?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I wouldn't say there's a risk of. I would say this is already happening now. And it's been happening for quite a long time, which is the fact that whether you like it or not, the heart of the matter is majority of consumers, even those you would think of are pretty much enjoying their services right now, they're not doing it in a vacuum. They're doing it in a context in which there is a context of high inflation and there is a cost of living crisis. And within this context, what we're seeing is that the majority of families right now are having to make very, very hard decisions on how to make sure they have food on the table for them and their kids. And when they're charged with triple-digit figures for basic connectivity to ensure their kid can go to school, this hits home. And this is a major problem we're having now. And we, from our side, we're very much concerned of how this debate has been shaping up over the past years, I guess now, and how somehow it seems to be the case that consumers most likely are to blame from pretty much everything. From their rules apparently have been hindering innovation. I was at a conference on AI the other day. Apparently, consumer rules apparently are the cause of Europe's delay and lagging behind since 1945, apparently, on pretty much every single sector. Who knew poor consumers could do this, right? Where we hear a story of how, the demand is so little, the infrastructure is there, and how can consumers not take it up? As in it's the consumer's fault that they don't see the benefit, they haven't saw the light of why they shouldn't have fiber in their homes. It's a no-brainer. If you cannot afford it, you will not take it. But most importantly, if you do not see a clear benefit, an added value that justifies to pay sometimes the disproportionate exponential prices they charge you from going from coaxial to fiber, when your connection still goes pretty much okay for the majority of your services. Maybe I don't need 5G. 4G is great for my streaming, teleworking, for my kids' homeschool. Maybe the overwhelming majority of consumers, I'm sorry to break it to you, they don't need that super ultra duper fiber they've been marketed, because the cheaper, affordable option is somehow managing quite well. So we need to figure a way in how we have to bring these sides together, in which we do have a necessity to innovate and to pursue investment in infrastructure and to lead the world, as they say, but we do have to realize one thing, that at the end of the day, these are services for consumers. And when consumers are telling you, thank you for this, but I cannot afford it, and thank you for this ultra service, but I'm very much fine with my offer so far, this is a sign that should reach out to you. And when we are talking about reform of these rules, we've said this from the beginning, there's plenty of complaints from consumers here. Telecommunications across the board are leading the consumer complaints for at least the last 5 years, the majority of our members. They still do. And if you ask them what are their main issues or why they're complaining about, it concerns end user rights. It concerns difficulty of switching. It concerns the issue of portability. It concerns unilateral price hikes without information or asking for consent, and then hardships to ensure that they can cease the contract, high penalty fees, breakdown of connection, lack of customer support, unresponsiveness from the operator, lack of coverage, or simple offers which have been advertised in a misleading way. These are what they keep on complaining about. And when we start having this discussion that we are having right now, and again, we see the end user focus simply put aside as in it's not an issue, what we have to say is, look, I mean, there's still a problem here. There are still rules that are out there that haven't been implemented. If we really want to have a discussion on how these rules must be changed, let's make sure that we start with the problems that the users are talking to us about. Because if we really want innovation, then there is no innovation if we don't break through to offer service that people want. You need to make things that people actually want. That's the real innovation. Innovation for the sake of innovation still doesn't cut it. You need to have something that serves consumers. And if you pursue innovation in a way in which is against consumer interest, that is based on, we're talking about AI, for instance, if it's based on the simple collection, exploitation of personal data without a user's consent, that is not for us innovation to benefit of consumers, no matter how much interesting the Mia avatar over there might be and how well it may speak. You still are harnessing my personal data without my consent. You're still breaching my fundamental rights. So this is the fundamental issue we have to deal with as we go forward. As in, if we really want to have a debate on how to review these rules, we have plenty of suggestions to go around on things we should tweak. We suggest to start there. Then we can start thinking about how to make sure that we have, we can reach all the other objectives together. But for us, the bottom line is that when it comes to end user rights, this is the bottom line. This is the last line of defense that keeps our consumers safe, but ensures a level playing field in a market that forces all the competitors to offer something which is in the consumer's interest. It's a way to keep them honest and ensure that we have business practices which are fair and that by rules that everyone must respect. So that is for us the key message that we want to give if we're really serious about going forward with some kind of review so ambitious of the rules.
Thank you very much. We could conclude here, I think. But I remember years ago when the 3G started, there was a need for killer applications so that people will start to exploit the bandwidth that 3G gave to the mobile network. But nowadays we see that people are using different applications, more or less everyone having his own base. And, Mr. Brechner, we heard on a recent event in Barcelona that operators are actually calling now for more restrictive open internet rules, which would actually mean that people will not be able to access all the content equally, which will, of course, also not really make them use this content. We know that in some cases networks are maybe overhelped with the data, so you were also calling for minimizing the wasteful practices, so be more sustainable with the use of the networks, which probably we all can agree. But how about this open internet thing? Why do you think it should be more restrictive? We thought it should be more open.
So just to avoid any confusion, we don't want the open internet to be changed in a way that makes the internet more restrictive. We want the open internet rules, to the extent there are any, to be reflective of the modern networks that we have, which are smart networks, which are managing different streams of traffic in real time every second of the day. And the open internet rules which were set up approximately 10 years ago, by the way, in the absence of a competition failure, they were just imposed on every operator in the industry despite a proper competition analysis. They have not kept up with the times. So the idea that every megabyte of traffic that we convey on our networks should be treated absolutely equally makes no sense in a world where we want to have smart networks managing business-critical data at the same time it's managing broad consumer applications. And so our call is not to get rid of the open internet and make the internet more restrictive. It's to keep up with the times and understand that we need a principles-based approach to how end users experience the internet, and that ensures that there's no discrimination, that there's no undue self-preferencing, whatever it might be. But the concept that we would have an open internet which says every megabyte of data which is conveyed on our networks needs to be treated in exactly the same way, and you can't do sensible traffic management to ensure that we have the right approach to the different types of services, that is anachronistic, and it needs to be changed immediately, because that is holding the industry back in terms of developing the different types of use cases that at the same time we can have a network which supports, as we're seeing increasingly, we go to the traffic question, we see broadcast content increasingly moving onto our networks from dedicated terrestrial satellite broadcast networks onto our networks. If we want our customers to experience real-time sport events where you don't want to have one household watching the game and hearing the cheering from a household down the street because everything's gone out of sync. And at the same time, we want to have our businesses running their critical applications, automated factories, whatever it might be. At the same time, we have the general level of internet usage, just browsing, email access. We have to be able to manage this in real time, and the open internet doesn't work in that regard. And even with the flexibility that the likes of Ofcom have tried to introduce through an indication that they'll be more flexible in their interpretation of the rules, that gets us so far. But in the end of the day, law is law, and we've seen it in the case of the European Court of Justice, where we have an understanding of what we think the law might be, but the Court of Justice has a very different interpretation. And in the end, the consumer offers that we put into the market had to be taken away from the market. Consumer offers which were designed specifically to help low-income households manage their consumption in a way where they couldn't afford full unlimited data offers, but at least we could make some of the data which they valued more highly unlimited to them. This was deemed to be unacceptable according to the European Court of Justice, despite it being specifically targeted for those that couldn't afford full unlimited data packages. So our point on the open internet is not that we should make the internet more restrictive. On the contrary, it needs to be open, but it needs to be done in a way which keeps up to date with the times we live in and the smart networks, which will be critical for the economic growth and competitiveness that we all aspire to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kitteler, maybe a sentence of your opinion on that, and then on general from the white paper and also some other talks that we heard, how do mergers and acquisitions actually affect the competition for the end user?
Okay, first maybe I said something about the open internet already in my first intervention. And I think the problem with discussions about open internet and maybe also some other subjects which are a little bit more like political sensitive is always to sort of like disentangle the different goals, right? I think that the case that Ben is making and also that I was alluding to in my first interruption is to allow for more flexibility, because I believe that there are like use cases, and I think that Ben is trying to explain that, where I think that telcos, end users and content providers will benefit from innovative approaches. And like I said, you know, Ofcom made an effort already, although the law in the UK also has some restrictions, but I think within that law they try to be as like innovative friendly without losing sight on the fundamental rights, as innovative friendly as possible. I think that's a good step that also should happen in the EU at the minimum. Your other subject about mergers and acquisitions, yeah, it's a completely different discussion, which ultimately potentially also affects end users, of course. And I think that the different reports that Roberto Viola was also referring to, especially the Draghi report, has quite some substance on that. I also know that there's a bit of criticism by some other economists, and I think there's a very sensible paper by SER. I think that Richard Vesey is speaking on the next panel about that. I think I'm in that camp a little bit as an economist, that consolidation as such shouldn't be a goal. I think sometimes it can help, of course, to create benefits for the merging parties as well as for end users if the economic efficiencies are passed through in terms of prices. And that's exactly what you need to assess in a particular merger. I think we all know in this room that like cross-border mergers are not prohibited per definition, but apparently for some reason which go beyond simply merger regulation, I would say, they're not happening that often, right? So it might be worth investigating why. I think some people have done it already, but I don't think it's an easy problem to solve. Within country mergers, of course, it's a different discussion. We know the UK with the CMA mobile merger. I think Robert Maurik said something about it also just a little bit earlier. You need to assess that on the merits of that particular case, but I don't think that like allowing all kind of mergers very easily will solve the investment problem, right? I don't think that relationship is that direct and easy.
Okay, thank you. Marina, I'll stop with you as I began with you. Maybe short, because it's not a lot of time, we talk too much. Is regulation hindering or actually accelerating the market from the user point of view? I mean, let's say we have a very good example of roaming. We saw what happened now that we can travel around and really use the phone for various purposes that we would not do at home. But in general, what do you think the regulation is doing really? I mean, from the BEREC point of view, probably.
I should say now this is a very interesting question for the BEREC, of course. Well, maybe it's popular among the society to say, well, we don't need regulation anymore, everything is well and so on. But we all know that we need it. Because something that is important is when we are regulating, we have to find a balance. It is always the balance, if we are thinking from the consumer point of view, balance between end users' protection and obligations that we input towards operators. I don't mean in cases when operators say to us as NRAs, oh, it's too expensive, we can do it, we don't understand, and so on. Truly to understand how things work in practice. That's why NRAs and of course BEREC through all the NRAs and sharing practice have to work together with stakeholders, with BEUC and other consumer association to find the best possible way to set some standards. For example, we have new technologies, we have artificial intelligence, and imagine if we say, okay, let's see what happens, because everything seems great, but you know, if we don't have some legal, some ethical, some quality standards, for example, for artificial intelligence, who knows what happens? So we have to have some standards and we have to have some balance. Also, what I wanted to say is that regulators of electronic communications are not islands. We are not isolated, because we know now and see that there are many other digital services that have impact on users of electronic communications. So we have to work together to understand that new digital service and know how to regulate and set boundaries for the market and for the competition. Also, what is important is that I think also Claudio mentioned, well, we have sometimes everything great on the paper, but we have to move forward to end users to make them understand what they have, what they can use, to understand their role of regulators, role of operators and consumer associations. That we can achieve in different ways. For example, we can cooperate with consumer association. We can, as regulators, go towards end users and try to explain them in an easy way their rights and their obligations. For example, I can say, not as a berec, but maybe from the national point of view, HACOM, we are trying to be not as just distant regulator, we are going towards the media, end user shows and radio, TV shows to try to explain end users in the simple way what is there and what are the maybe possible threats in using digital services. Because we are all talking about digital inclusion, but this is very important to address and to highlight. Digital inclusion, not only if we are talking about universal service and people who are on the verge of poverty, who live in a distant areas on islands and they don't have connectivity. It is for everybody, because digital services are becoming a necessity in everyday life for functioning, for activities. In the future, you will not exist if you don't have access to digital service. So it is very important to have that, but have some kind of balance. And of course, end users also, we are expecting that they have some level of awareness where they can find information and where they can find the answers to their questions. On the other one hand, this is the regulator and maybe his role of resolving disputes. And on the other hand, operators should have a strong consumer protection and strong consumer system to address problems immediately. Not to say, okay, we will call you and contact you in, I don't know, 1 month. So they have to explain in easy way to the, okay, I'm looking at him, but he's there, so. In the easy way, how to resolve problems and how to make this a digital environment friendly for them, enabled to use and understand and to benefit from it.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry that we looked at the red time so long. So let me wrap out also in the way that operators without consumers would not exist and vice versa, I think. So we have to find the proper way to cooperate. And of course, we are also doing a lot of things to educate consumers how to use and how to become a digital so to say, member of society. And I hope that in next years we will still gather together like this. Not everything will be digital, which will also maybe influence your networks, operators' networks in very good ways, so that they are not that busy as they would be if we were all at home. I'm sorry that I didn't give the word to anyone else here in the public, but I hope that we rounded up a little bit this topic and that you from my perspective, I think they were excellent answers, and I think I can only thank you for those. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bastian, and everyone. Now it's time for the coffee break, but you need to promise me to be back to start the next session at 4:15. So 4:15 in the room, okay? No, 4:15 you order your last coffee. Well done, Ben.
Thanks a lot.
coisa sem valor. Não frequente os bares do passado. Tenha compaixão de minha dor e seja bem feliz com seu amado.
O que me enlouquece é onde errei.
Tua indiferença já paguei. Meu bem, papapé, 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 papapé,
Welcome back. Thank you for keeping the coffee break short. We're now getting to the last leg of this day with the much-awaited panel on the future of market regulation. For that, I will invite the fellow panelists to join me on stage. So we've got Ingrid Malfe from Iliad, Richard Fizi from SER, Vesna from Slovenia Telecom, and Carla Moroso from Anacom. And the panel will be moderated by Matej Bodevček. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Philippe. And while to give our panelists a few minutes to gather their thoughts for their opening statements, if you could put up the visual that I wanted to quickly explain. Yes. So here, to follow up a little bit on the situation that Pinar mentioned before, there's two tables showing the state of regulated markets in Europe. So you will see 27 member states plus the UK. And you have at the top, you have the three most important markets. So wholesale local access market, market 1 of the current relevant market recommendation, wholesale central access, and wholesale dedicated capacity market, market 2. And the two pictures show the situation. On the left is from about 3.5 years ago, so from November 2021. And on the right, it's very recent, from March this year. And the message that jumps out just from the different proportions of colors is that the regulation is happening, right? Whereas on market 1, on wholesale local access market in 2021, we only had 6 member states which fully or partly deregulated the markets. Now we have 16 already. The situation is even more pronounced on the bitstream market, market 3B, but of course that one was removed from the relevant market regulation, whereas situation on market 2, on the list line market, is progressing a bit slower. So we had 14 member states 3.5 years ago that at least partly deregulated market, and now we're up to 17. So when I saw this picture, the question that came to my mind was, do we need a paradigm shift in approach to ex-ante regulation in Europe? Or do the current rules, the code, the current relevant market recommendation, give the appropriate level of flexibility to the regulators to deregulate the markets where efficient competition has developed, but to also continue regulating the market where the situation demands it? And conversely, of course, here on the right, you will see physical infrastructure access market, which was never in the Commission recommendation, but is despite that regulated in 6 member states and the UK. So to help me answer that question, we have our panelists today, and I suggest that Vesna from Telekom Slovenia starts. And to give you just a little bit of context, so Telekom Slovenia is the regulated incumbent, fixed mobile incumbent that is still regulated in both market 1 and 2, so it's the access giver in Slovenia, whereas Iliad is the challenger operator in, I think, 8 member states, where in addition to building out its own fiber network, it relies on wholesale regulated inputs to provide services at the retail level. And Anacom, I felt, was a good regulator to include in the panel, because it seems that their light touch approach to regulating fiber in combination with effective SMP-based physical infrastructure access has contributed to very high fiber coverage in Portugal, where they are at almost 95% of households. So please, Vesna, when you're ready.
Thank you, Matej. Yeah, very good starting point, actually. If we are looking at these pictures, we can see that actually things going right way, but not all over Europe, if I may say. We are in the time of very ambitious goals European Union has, we would like to be gigabit society 2030, we would like sunset Cooper networks till 2030. We are facing, as operators, we are facing with really challenging times. Our competitors, if I may say, are not anymore only operators, but also cloud providers over the top and so on. And actually, I think that these times are requiring new approach to the regulation. Current principle, I think it's some say, how to say, maybe sunsetting. And the ideas of relaxing the regulation, I think, is the right one. Because the times of ex-monopolists are gone. I don't think that on any of the markets in European Union we have really monopolists anymore. Especially the way our approach, which is taken to regulate the national markets, it's definitely not the right one. We have on each market 3 to 4 operators, converged operators. So if we would like to address the challenges Europe has in the future, we need also to adapt the approach regulator will have it. So if we go maybe more into details, today the requirements for the regulation is to have 3 parallel networks. This is definitely not something what is encouraging operators to invest, because, for instance, I'm CTO, I have budget which is limited, and then you need to decide where to invest. To invest, I don't know, in cloud-based network of the future, invest into cybersecurity, resilient network. On the other side, again, invest into third parallel network. It's actually not logical, actually. If you have one network and which is alive, or connection which has end customer, and then you have 2 additional with no customers, then this investment, it's not something what is encouraging operators. So I think that the future statements of the Commission, and consequently probably also from the regulator side, should be clear. Or we need to have 2 parallel networks, is this enough? Or we would like to have 3. I think that 2 are enough, because we have so many services which are actually running on the top of operators' networks, that there we have competition, actually. On the other side, we know that every country has some bottlenecks. How to address this? I think that current regulation doesn't fit anymore to this. So if we would like to boost the sunset of the Cooper and go with fiber networks, and especially with 5G network, we always forget that also for running real 5G network, we will need also fiber to every base station. So if we are thinking this way, I think that we should think about symmetric regulation, because usually we have some part of the country where it's one operator, the other, and so on, the other combination. And if we would like to build resilient networks, sovereign and so on, what we are talking now, we need to have access to the passive infrastructure, all passive infrastructure which is available, to boost the investments into the fiber networks. So I think that the time is right. I think that also what we heard from the Commission, it's the right path with Digital Network Act to simplify it. The current framework, I think it's a good idea. I don't want, again, to stuck with regulation for next 20 years. I just remember or recall in the morning when current chair of berec said, we will not keep with the regulation for next 20 years. My beginning of my career, 2002, 2003, Commission said now is the last ex-ante regulation. After that came ex-post regulation. we are still here, you know. So we will see what will happen, but I think that it's time for changes, change approaches, to really to boost the investment, boost research, and that Europe will become serious player on this in this landscape.
Thank you. Ingrid, do you agree?
Not entirely. No, yeah. First of all, I mean, good afternoon, everyone. Let me just thank Berec for inviting me today. It's a real pleasure to be here. Iliad is indeed present today in 8 countries. We are mostly a challenger, but also in incumbents in 1 country, under the nice supervision of Robert in Ireland. And so we have started as a small new entrant player in France, and today, so we are the 5th telecom operator in Europe in terms of number of subscribers. And I just want to share today what are our takeaways after these 10 years, about 10 years of expansion, European expansion. The EU regulatory model functions well. I mean, it has fostered competitive markets, investment, innovation. It has enabled new players to enter the market. I mean, today, if you look at the figures, 55% of FTTH, of EU homes passed with FTTH have been deployed by alternative operators, while 40% are covered by incumbents. Access regulation to fixed networks is key. I mean, access to fixed networks is, of course, key when you enter in a market as a mobile operator, as we did in Poland, for example. If you don't have access to fixed networks, I mean, you cannot build a convergent offer, so it's just, you cannot compete on the market. So access regulation is key on fixed networks. We see that the concrete application of the model is different from one country to another. I mean, France has adopted a mix of symmetric and asymmetric model. Italy rely more on asymmetric. Poland has deregulated most of the market except some areas where there is regulation under SMP or state aid. I mean, there are some differences, but overall the market is flexible, the regulation, is flexible enough, the regulatory model is flexible enough to adapt to those market circumstances. And so we think even despite some differences, maybe inconsistencies, as you said, the model is flexible enough, and overall there is no need to put everything into question. Why? Because telecom markets are characterized by long-term investment cycles, and for that you need regulatory stability and predictability. This is absolutely crucial. So we need public policy that don't change every 5 years and with totally different rules that we don't know. So today we are in a situation where we understand, I mean, Roberto Viola didn't say much about that, but we understand, we hear that the Commission is considering major changes to the model, that is eliminating the markets from the recommendation. This is short-term measure, in fact. In the longer term, questioning even the SMP regime and also the symmetric regime that exists in France. Just few details about each of that. The markets in the recommendation, I mean, deleting the markets from the recommendation, we don't really understand the justification. I mean, is it to save NRA resources? I mean, I think it would maybe save 5% of human resources from the NRAs, not to have to review every 5 years the markets. And for me, I think it's not a big deal, I mean, for NRAs to monitor the markets they are in charge of. So I don't think it's a reason of efficiency. Even with the 2 markets, we see very clearly that their regulation is already on the way. By the way, shift from regulation to competition law is already written very clearly in the code. So you have all the tools to shift to competition law. I'm not saying that, of course, we need to regulate forever these 2 markets because they won't become competitive. That's not my point, and we see in some countries that it's already deregulated for many years. with one exception, access to civil engineering, on which I'm quite convinced that we will need a regulation, maybe for forever. Ex-ante regulation, I think SMP, ex-ante regulation on access to civil engineering for a very long time. Maybe we will come back on this. Second point, SMP regulation by itself. I understand the concept is also questioned by the Commission. I think this SMP model has the advantage of being rooted in competition law. I mean, the concept of SMP is in fact very the same as dominant position, and this has a good advantage that it gives predictability to the actors. In fact, you know more or less if you get bigger, then you are in dominant position or close to being a dominant position, and so you can be regulated, and the same for access security. Everybody knows this concept. There are lots of jurisprudence, so I fear that inventing new concepts without any such case law, without any principle to rely on, can be very, very risky, in fact. So that is for the SMP regulation. And just one word on symmetric regulation in France, because maybe we won't, I don't know if we will come back in the discussion, but so I'm French, as you can hear, and it's close to my heart. I mean, France is a success story on fiber. I mean, the figures are very clear, 91% of coverage. Today, in more than, I think, 92% of lines, users have the choice between 4 operators. So the figures are clear, and still, this is based on the model of symmetric regulation, Article 61.3, and still the Commission apparently is questioning today this model, and we really, I mean, we really fail to understand why. And again, I mean, is a pretext of simplification is apparently the reason. I think the Commission should be very careful not to, in fact, create more complexity under this pretext of simplification, because if you delete a framework, I wonder on what principle the NRA will be able to take further decision, that is, decision on the symmetric framework or dispute resolution decision. I mean, this will open up something very, I mean, unpredictable, and still predictability is important, as I said. And yeah, just to conclude, I mean, we think the framework is flexible enough. It gives the NRAs some tools, a toolbox that has worked well. They don't need to use the tools if the competition is there, that they can use it if it's not there. And we have been discussed, I mean, we have here panels, we have read economic studies, and I think none of this has been able to put an alternative that is credible on the table. So why not changing things that is working already?
Okay, thank you. Carla, where are you leaning? Towards Vesna, towards Ingrid, or do you have a completely different opinion?
Oh, thank you, Matej. First, I would like to thank berec to invite me to be here to discuss this very relevant issue. I would start with the question as, do we still need ex-ante regulation? In my view, yes, we still need these type of ex-ante interventions. It's very relevant for enhance and promote competition in telecom markets. In countries such as in Portugal, for example, we have a physical infrastructure network of the incumbent operator that is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. And so investments, it's not feasible to replicate investments in this kind of infrastructures. And ex-ante regulation has been responsible throughout the years to allow alternative operators to do their own choice, to do their own investments, to invest in rolling out of their networks. And so they choose to invest in very high capacity networks. So ex-ante regulation has been responsible for promoting competition, for reinforcing connectivity, and also for enhancing for ensuring that end users have access to a diversified variety of offers. Of course, physical infrastructure market, it's not the only one that still needs this kind of regulation. We have a small amount of markets that also present some failures, and still these regulation, if not at national level, at more regional or local level. You mentioned and you classified or identified them as a kind of light regulation. We never use that approach, but it can be said like that. For example, access to fiber, the incumbent operator has obligations, like, for example, on price, but it's obliged to practice fair and reasonable prices, not cost-oriented prices. But looking at the present and to the future, markets are evolving, business too and telcos too, and so we have to see if this ex-ante regulation, the way it is applied currently, is still enough to deal with the markets and current developments in markets. We are currently witnessing a profound shift in the telecom markets. It's not anymore only about networks and about infrastructures. In some countries, of course, this is it continues to be very relevant, but in others we are seeing the divestment of these kind of infrastructures. But businesses are shifting towards another kind of services. It's more about information, about data, about content. So businesses have evolved and operators have evolved, and telcos started to diversify its offer, its portfolio, and with these new services they started to provide end-to-end service, entering new markets, new kinds of services. And so with this they strengthen their market position. These complex developments impact the way classic limitation of markets is designed, and also new ways of exercising market power are being identified and are being exercised. For example, by controlling access, it's not only control access to essential inputs. By those essential puttings, I'm referring to, of course, access to networks, access to infrastructures, but also access to content, access to information. And this is a new way of exercising market power. And in some markets that tends to more concentrated structure, these risks to be exercised jointly or in a coordinated way. So the challenge is to have national regulators that maintain ex-ante regulation, as this kind of regulation is still very important for more traditional markets, but who have holistic approach, a holistic perspective of the markets and, of course, of the regulation, and to have flexibility and to have the proper tools and instruments to deal with these new ways of exercising market power. It's not only it's to have an articulated view with other regulators from from media, for example, and that will allow the markets, the failures, the failures that are being emerging, that are affecting end users to be dealt with. And so, and the challenge is also to combine this more traditional ex-ante regulation with the focus on supply side of the market, with an intervention on the demand side of the market, intervention towards end users, towards consumers, by empowering them to give them the tools to understand this complex ecosystem, and for them also to be an important instrument in dealing with these new situations, new ways of exercising market power. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Richard, what do you think? Should we have an alternative, and do you have an idea about an alternative, or should we continue as we did it for the last 20 plus years?
So, first of all, thank you for inviting me, Berec, and these are my own personal views, not those of Sarah or anybody else. I mean, my starting point is that, you know, we are, although sometimes you could be mistaken for thinking so, we are not in a fundamental regulatory crisis here. We're not in a banking crisis where there's been a failure of the regulatory regime. I don't think we're in a financial crisis in the telecoms industry, or that there's been fundamental regulatory failure, which is not to say that we can't always think about improving things. To the extent there are problems, I think, in the industry at the moment in Europe, to some extent they reside on the mobile side of the industry, where the SMP framework, by and large, has been remarkably absent over the last 20 years. And there, some of the issues are demand-side problems that I don't see have any obvious relationship to the SMP framework. And I think the story actually on the fixed side of the industry, where the SMP framework is much more prevalent and influential, and has been influential on the performance of that part of the industry, is by and large pretty positive in Europe, and in some respects more positive than elsewhere in the world. So I wanted to start by saying I just don't accept this, I think, slightly confected crisis that fundamental changes or radical changes to the SMP framework are sometimes proposed as being a response to. My own view is that I think it's actually been remarkably successful as a sort of framework for a number of reasons, and I think anything that would replace it would need to, in my view, to meet these conditions. So one is, I think it's been very adaptive to changes in technology over time, and that's really important and not straightforward to achieve in designing these kinds of regulations. It's been pretty adaptive and flexible to addressing very different market and competitive conditions in different member states around Europe, which we all know are very different. And again, I would be wary of anything that sought to abstract from that or ignore these differences in competitive circumstances. And thirdly, it has had a very disciplinary effect on the scope of regulation. And to some extent, my bigger worry than the SMP framework is the displacement effect that it's had in leading to things like the roaming regulation and other forms of intervention through spectrum licenses and so on, that reflect the disciplinary effect and mean that regulators have then sought to go outside of the SMP framework in order to intervene. I also take Ingrid's point completely that the costs of change and a prolonged period of uncertainty about how any replacement regulatory framework would operate at a time of
peak or just past peak investment in the industry, is a very significant issue that shouldn't be ignored. And so any alternative would need to have, I think, very considerable and obvious advantages over the existing framework to be worth contemplating. Having said that, very quickly, there are three things that I think people worry about in the context of the existing framework. One is this whole issue about the list of relevant markets and should it be there and so on, which I think is really just a debate about who has the power in implementing the framework, and that's a fair debate. My own view is if the Commission's going to have the power in terms of exercising vetoes, then the Commission's decisions ought to be capable of being appealed. It seems to me that's an obvious, should be an obvious feature of the regime. Is not there at the moment, but should be. The second issue is geographic differences, so the complexity as competitive conditions change nationally within member states in different parts, and my answer there is just yes, the world is complicated and national regulators need to apply the framework diligently in a way that properly reflects those complexities. I don't see a good argument for simplifying regulation in a way that abstracts from the complexities of the world for the sake of it. And I actually see sort of significant data. So I'm afraid regulators just need to work hard in responding to the changes and the complexities of the world that we live in. And the last is this sort of oligopoly problem of, and I think it was alluded to, does the SMP framework mean you deregulate when there are 2 or 3 or whatever number you prefer? And my view there is I think one of the great advantages of this framework, although not often used in this way so far, is you can withdraw from markets and observe actual market behavior and then go back in as a regulator if you observe problematic outcomes. So I don't know, in a world of excess capacity and low marginal costs, which we have in telecoms, what prices are going to do in the long run in 2-player fiber markets. But the SMP framework allows regulators to see and then to come back in if those look problematic, and for the participants in the market to know that if outcomes are problematic, the regulator will come back in.
Thank you very much. I think the opening statements were a great starting point for the debate. We have some time for questions from the room. Now, contrary to Philippe, I do not know every last one of you. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, state your name, affiliation, and if it's a question for a specific panelist, also who it is for. Yes.
The regulation, what now happening in the mobile, what I'm speaking, the most of regulation profit is not used by European people, but the third world of American, that companies using more, and they have more access in European countries to use. Do you understand what I mean? It is
yes. But do you have a question for a panelist? Or?
Okay. This is happening, but why we don't get in locally and national regulation not done? Why nobody focus it? Why European Commission not focusing the national roaming? Because now the time in the European countries, most of countries have maximum of average 3 MNOs. But if 3 MNOs work together and they keep the price up, and third world country MNOs, they use the regulation deal, one of the European countries, and come in via the under the market come up. My question is, how going to solve this problem?
So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking, should wholesale mobile access, so X market 15, be re-regulated in Europe.
Yeah.
Anybody has a view on that? You want to go, Carla, or?
Yes, I can. I wasn't expecting that question, but it's relevant because it was a market that was already in the list, and at that time we felt, and Portugal was one country or one regulator that didn't regulate that market. Many years have passed, and I'm not completely sure that I can make this statement. But of course, we at the time, several years ago, we were dealing with that market, and we studied that market, we analyzed the market, and it was very difficult to achieve a conclusion on the market because there was a kind of a structure or a behavior with where the operators were very aligned in the strategies they had towards the market. So access, so providing access to their mobile networks was not, and at a certain sense is still not common in Portugal. So these markets, as well as other markets where there can be a dynamic of at a certain point of coordination, deserves to be studied. And of course, we throughout the years we used other instruments to try to overcome the problem of not regulating directly the market 15. For example, we used spectrum auctions where it was needed, where markets where we concluded that there was competition problems by, for example, reserving parts of the spectrum to allow new entrants in the market, as they didn't get access to mobile networks. And this was done in Portugal, and for example, very recently, a new entrant entered the market, so by using this kind of instrument. So I believe this is a market that deserves to be discussed, and the mobile market, it's not always so competitive as is presented, because it was born as a competitive market, on the contrary of it's not happen with fixed markets. But currently, that competitive situation in certain countries, in certain structures, it's not so competitive as it was before. So it's important to discuss these markets and to have the tools to be able to intervene where it is necessary.
I saw that both Richard and Vesna want to respond to this quickly.
Just quickly, maybe. From my side, Market 15 years ago regulated was the aim of the regulation was the majority of MVNOs was seeking access to have cheaper calls and SMS. This market today is more or less dead. The calls are disappearing, the SMS are disappearing, and in my opinion, every regulation needs to ask what we would like to achieve. Today, everything, as we said, is over the top. Over the top providers, they are using our networks. There is no regulation, and it's hard to do this, honestly. And it's the same question with the whole regulation. What is the aim? What we would like to achieve? How, with the regulation, if we would keep it, we will reach the goals we have at the end of the day. And I think that this is the basic thinking or rethinking we need to do. Just to regulate something, just to put some SMPs, what is the final goal? We have actually, as we said, in every country, 3 to 4 converged operator. What we would like to reach if we would regulate just one of them. Maybe some goals we would like to see, well, but at the moment, I don't see really the answer, what we would like to see.
There's the road of joint dominance as well, yeah, right? But the Czechs tried it recently, and it didn't sit well with the Commission. So, Richard, you wanted to respond?
My very quick point would be, although I don't think there's a financial crisis or indeed a sort of regulatory catastrophe at the moment, I don't think excess profits is obviously the problem either. And if you're going to find joint SMP in mobile markets, the first thing you would look at is evidence of excessive profits. It doesn't seem to me to be the place that regulators should be spending their time, based on my understanding, although they should be spending a bit more time better understanding the profitability of different parts of the industry.
Yes, we're almost out of time, but I think we have time for a quick question. Pinar, please.
Thank you so much. What do you think that the consequences of the Commission's proposal of reducing or dismantling ex-ante regulation would be on the countries that are in the queue to enter into the European Union? Because we are now talking about member states, and we have an idea, all of us, more or less. But what about the ones that now maybe they don't have the same deployment rates and take-up rates in terms of digital decade objectives, and maybe some of them don't have the same developed regulatory framework? What would you think the consequences of the Commission's proposal? Thank you.
Any of your groups present in any of the candidate countries that you would have a view on this?
No, I'm not a specialist of their market situations, but I would say that, why not offering them the same regulatory tools that we implemented in Europe and that have been successful? Yeah, I see. If we regulate everything and they start by deregulating or not regulating, there are going to be probably some problems. So, yeah, I think it is. Maintaining a kind of ex-ante access regulation in Europe is also, I think, useful for candidate countries indeed.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't want to keep you from the cocktail promised by Philippe. I know on the agenda we have some closing remarks, so I think it's time for that.
Thank you, Marcel. Congratulations. One more important housekeeping matter for me. BEREC very much value your opinion. So 2 ways of giving you feedback on today's event. In a few days, you will get into your mailbox an invitation, a survey. Please take a few minutes to fill it in. If you've got an urgency to give your opinion, you can scan the code bars on any of the screen outside and give your opinion immediately. That's all for me. I'm now delighted to hand back over to Marco for some concluding remarks. Marco.
Thank you, Philip. So before we move on to the final and less formal part of today's forum, a few well-deserved thank yous are in order. First, I would like to thank all of you for being here with us today. As we can see from the slide, not yet, we have gathered participants from all around the globe, almost 50 countries. That's quite a number. The number of countries participating is increasing every year. And this is the positive sign that we must be doing something right. A special thank you goes also to our moderators, Philippe, Matej, and Boštjan, for their excellent moderation. And of course, to each and every panelist, your expertise and insights contributed to an important and meaningful discussion, opening new perspectives, and I'm quite sure giving us all some food for thought. Therefore, I would like to invite you all back to the stage to make another memory together with an audience. Maybe it's better to go here in front. Please. Come on. We can, please. Please, please. Let's make a photo. Good, thank you. Now it will be the photo. Good, thank you. Okay, I have few words more. A special thank you goes also to our BEREC co-chairs, who hosted over 300 stakeholders during this morning meet and greet sessions. Before I truly wrap up, 2025 is a BEREC 15th anniversary, a milestone that shows our dedication and expertise in supporting Europe's telecom and digital markets, always with end users in mind. As we look ahead, we are more committed than ever to using our knowledge and innovation to make a real difference across the region. And if we are talking about the innovation, here is the video created by BEREC office together with the AI. Let me remind you once again to submit your proposals to the BEREC work program 2026 by April 10th. They are very important for us. And now, at the end, I would like to extend my gratitude to my ACOS team and the BEREC office for preparing this excellent conference, for all the hard work needed that everything ran smoothly today. Thank you. And as the afternoon turns into the evening, and after such intensive day, I warmly invite you to join us outside for some informal networking and conversations. Let's continue to discuss our topics in a more relaxing setting. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.